Beckye Frey is the principal planner in the City of Redmond's long-range planning team. She began her career more than 25 years ago, working with local and county government agencies in Washington, Arizona, and Texas. She is currently leading the transit-oriented development planning, environmental review, code updates, and community engagement for the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan Update, including updates to encourage and incentivize mass timber construction. Welcome, Beckye.
Thank you for inviting me to chat and share what we're doing here at Redmond. I'm going to really quickly just talk about what is Redmond 2050 and what are we looking at, and then I'm going to share some information that we're doing to update our green building program and our incentive program. Let's see, go. So for Redmond 2050, it is our comprehensive plan update. It is a massive revision. We're making the transition from suburban to urban standards. So everything is changing. About 90% of our zoning code is changing. We're going from 50 zoning districts to 20. Lots happening. We're also doubling our city's population. We're adding about 25,000 housing units and 30,000 jobs in this plan. There's 4 new light rail stations that are opening. So because of the scale of what is happening and the changes that we're doing, we're trying to make sure that we're setting really high standards and making sure that the new development that's going to come in is really going to make some progress towards our goals. And we set 3 major themes for this update: our equity and inclusion, sustainability, and resiliency. And so everything that we're doing is going into that. So every single policy review, every single code update has to go through and pass these lenses for review for each of these themes. And we're also incorporating everything into just implementing what we did with our environmental sustainability action plan. That includes, we did a climate vulnerability assessment with our environmental review for Redmond 2050. So there's a lot going on, a lot of major things. I'm just going to focus on 2 little pieces of it. So 2 tiny little pieces that are actually going to have really big implications. So similar to your last speaker, they mentioned that this is a big change, so we wanted to make it easy to implement. That was kind of our goal here as well, because we're changing not only what we're requiring, but the entire structure of how we're requiring things. We wanted to make it easy for people to jump into the new program, and then we'll ramp up the requirements over time. So what we've done, we're scratching and replacing our green building program. It is still going to be voluntary, but we are switching it to a points-based structure. So there's options in there that just depending on your options, you'll get more or less points. There's a performance period. There is a compliance and penalties section in there as well. And so there's it's voluntary with a little bit of teeth, and we're going to make sure that people, if they say they're going to do something, there's a follow-up on that, and we're not going to let them get away with not following through. So we're trying to make sure that, again, we're achieving the results that we're aiming for. And so we've set some minimum requirements that includes 100% electric. There are a couple of caveats. There are some systems in there that are exempt from that. There's some energy use targets. We're leaning away from a very specific requirements as far as which certification or which products. We're going to performance standards, and we're going to some things that are flexible. So as long as you get to a result that meets the outcome that we're looking for, we don't care which certification program, we don't, the options on how you get there, we're trying to be super flexible. But we are looking to use the portfolio manager to share data with the city so we can track things and track impacts over time. And we're looking to make sure that people are implementing the things that are coming down the pipe later. We're trying to get them implemented earlier. So there's a lot of things that are folded into that. But it does also include embodied carbon and tracking, and it sets a minimum 10% over a baseline starting point. I do believe that there's some discussion about potentially raising that to 20%. So we'll see if it ends up being adopted at 10 or 20%. There's also a number of different things that are optional. Again, the more you do, the more points you get, so the more you get in return. It includes everything from deconstruction to renewable energy, storage, etc. There's also water conservation. There's a couple of things that we're working on from that. And we're looking at trying to get to an embodied carbon 30% reduction. So for the green building program. So there's a lot going on with this. We're adopting not only an entirely new program, but an entirely new appendix to our zoning code that walks through how to calculate everything and how to record it and all of those things. So we're making it crystal clear from the beginning. So again, design early and keeping that in mind as you go through everything. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of bits and pieces and parts that fill into this, but I think people are going to find that it matches our regional goals. It fits very cleanly with the direction that everybody's trying to head, and it just tries to make sure that we're moving things forward at the pace that we would like to see them. So we are also doing some very unique things in our Overlake Center. Overlake is a metro center. It is a massive area. It's where Microsoft's home ground is. We also have 2 brand new light rail stations that are opening up just right around the corner. So we're doing a lot here, and we're making some massive changes that include going from around 8 stories typical building to allowing up to 30 stories. So there's a lot going on there. We're also trying to make sure that this area is a leader in sustainable buildings. And that includes making some green building requirements mandatory in Overlake, whereas in everywhere else, the green building program is 100% voluntary. There are some very specific things that will be mandatory in Overlake. And so there's some things that are going on there that are actually kind of interesting. I'm not going to go through this, but I just wanted to show you that the scale of change is pretty significant from an FAR standpoint and a building height standpoint. You're going from a typical, 4 to 8 story building to all the way up to 30 stories is a pretty significant change. The mandatory pieces include building performance, energy code related pieces, a green lease leader certification. And again, we're starting really low with the intent to potentially ramp this up, but you will have to a mandatory 10% reduction in embodied carbon. We're also doing a complete rework of our incentive package. Again, leaning towards the future and moving away from some of the standards that have been around for a while and the codes are catching up to or past us in some cases. So the incentive package is going to be completely overhauled. There is a lot there, including incentives for mass timber, towers, catalyst projects. And so there's a lot going in there. It's also changing from how we do it to a points-based system. It's a menu of options. The more you do, the more impactful it is, the more in line with the city's priorities, and in some cases, the more costly it is, the more points you'll get in return. The categories for that incentive program are all across the board, but one of the big major categories is green building. We also are really stressing, of course, affordable housing. The other big one, though, for us is inclusive design. So we have a lot of incentives for inclusive design as well. So this is the list of things that are included in our green building incentive program. It matches pretty closely with what we're doing at the citywide green building incentive program. You'll see the building electrification, building materials reuse, etc. So, but for the incentive program, like the embodied carbon baseline, you have to show a minimum of 20% reduction. There's some other things too. So you'll have to get to certain outcomes in order to get points. The higher your outcomes are, the more you get in return. So it's pretty significant change in there. We're hoping to get there. The other thing is we have additional bonus points. So in addition to any points you might earn under other things, if you end up getting to a net zero, you'll get extra bonus points. And if it's a mass timber construction, you will get a significant bonus points in our pilot period. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to get mass timber construction 12 stories and above, if possible, in Overlake. But we'll also be looking for mass mass timber up to 12 stories in some of our other centers as well, in Marymore and downtown. But we are putting together a pilot period for extra incentives for mass timber for the next couple of years, to see if we can get those in. Again, we really want to be a leader in and pushing things faster. So the things that we really want to see, we're going to be incentivizing pretty significantly early on. And then as time goes by, those will ramp down a little bit. So we are entering into our testing phase. If anybody would like to be a part of that, our last testing phase actually is occurring right now. It'll happen over the next couple of months. We're looking for partners who would like to read through the proposed code and the proposed incentive programs and just provide us with some final feedback. We're going to go in the spring to the Planning Commission for a final recommendation, and the adoption will be this fall for most of it, with some bits and pieces of downtown and Marymore will be early next year. So went through that super quick, but I am always happy to talk with folks about this as well.